before we do another chaotic episode, which this will not be another part, will not be advancing the story this part, but today we're doing the demographics of a lot of nations. Yeah, it's on the more interesting demographics. First is the country of Sahi. This country, of course, gained their independence from Tamara. It's a Tamaran African colony, and most of the ethnic makeup and demographic makeup. Again, this is the early middle age, currently the Dark Ages era. So like 600 BC. I don't know, not BC, AD or yeah, AD. So no, it will be around 750 AD. There are not really any real empires that much. Also would be the closest thing, or Kanto, to a real empire. But yeah, first country will be Sahi. So Sahi used to be, when it gained independence, 53% Tamaran. This, of course, is people from Tamara, but over time, many people opted to call themselves Sahian as well, which make up around 36% of the population. So it's around 69% of the population included Tamaran population. And also there's a large portion of population from these Middle Eastern countries and North African countries as well, including Spania, Croatia, Oran, Monama, and even these European countries up here as well. So there's a lot of immigration. And of course, these European countries are not identified as Tamara, and they can be identified with their own nations. So currently, Sahi is actually mostly North African, with around 65%. Middle Eastern, no, not 65%, 60%, with 32% being from the Middle East. Okay, I actually think around 26%. 51% still from the Middle Eastern portion of the population. Also, around 20% are from European countries. So Sahi is actually a very is one of the few really demographically diverse countries. In the rural areas, it is mostly the Sahi people and Tamaran people. This escalates to basically around 40 to 43% of the population. Meanwhile, the city, it is much more diverse, as many traders and people move to settle in the capital city and other major port cities as well in Sahi. In the rural desert area, there's not really many people as well, but yeah. Next is Croatia. Most of the people in this country identify as Croatian. There is a small Orani and Spanian population and Tamaran population as well in the country. Spania is mostly Spanian. Oran is mostly Orani people, with 81% of people identify as Orani. But there is a small minority of people from Asgarcia and Croatia usually coming in through the border because, again, this is like the Middle Ages. And there were tons of people with their ancestry of Spania even as well. And there were even a small portion of Sahians living in Oran. Oran does have a pretty, Oran is a pretty popular country to trade in, as it is around the North African trade route. Then we have Monama. Monaman ethnicity. This is basically the Monaman ethnicity over here in Estra. There's no more Monamans basically in this part of the area. Most of them have moved to this country. Monama is like 94 to 95% of Monaman ethnicity. Meanwhile, there is a small portion of Zlatavians in the country, mostly in Italy, alongside of many European ethnicities. This part of the country has a completely different ethnic makeup than Monama, which is 99% Monama. Meanwhile, this area is only 79% Monaman. However, Italy has never made a large portion of the population, and however, after centuries of people living in the country, even like the Italian part, most people doesn't accept, hey, this is a part it must be delicate balance, which thankfully in the last catastrophe, The delicate balance of trade was not interrupted, but it is interrupted. There was likely a chance that this area might go its own way, simply because it's basically disconnected by the sea. Next is as these five countries here. These countries are still mostly majority the Tamaran, so their ancestors come from Tamara. And even if Tamara disappears, this is basically Tamara's greatest legacy as of this point. These countries are, in the 50%, which means there's no minority, there's no majority countries in these areas. Yes. Or basically a country with no ethnic majority. These countries, kind of like how the modern day US is, where there's no real quote unquote ethnic majority because the largest ethnic group I think in the US, which is German, make up like 40 million people, and there's 340 million people in the US. So kind of like that. But as of now, Warpy has the second highest behind Fusaka. There's also inter-migration at high rates, but the amount of people coming in here that are foreign-born are increasingly not becoming of Tamaran descent, as more people from the Alp, Tratavia, the Middle Eastern countries in equal, and of course of each other, and these Balkan countries have more of an interest of coming here than people from the Middle East do, whereas there is still a small minority of Trinket, Popi, Elis, Jewry, and Gossans, and Estrans, which are basically the Egyptian country. I know the Egyptian country had a different name, but that was because that's what the last name of the king is, as well. A lot of these countries, like, that's what the king called the country. So yeah, basically, that's it. Alp country is mostly of basically various alpine tribes, but this country doesn't have an ethnic majority because this country is a tribal nation. There is a capital city, but the country is made up of various tribes, so it is a tribal country, kind of like Equal, which is a tribal country as well. Equal is a very tribal country. Most of the people in Equal, like, there's some pretty small provinces in the country because it's a very tribal country. And yeah, this country has no ethnic majority, but basically this country would be 99% the same, would be 99% equal. But divided by tribe, the highest tribe would be Pawan, which is mostly because they make up around 57% of the capital population, which makes up around 26% of the population. So we have Darwin, which is mostly Darwini. Most of these countries are mostly like one ethnicity and one, basically kind of, mono ethnicity countries. The Greek islands are mostly, one ethnicity. So these several Greek islands. Salsa is majority Tamaran. Despite this country has only recently gained its independence, so it has not really yet to form its own ethnic identity. So yeah, there used to be two little countries right here, but these countries don't exist anymore, and they don't. And basically, over time, they did assimilate into Tamara. But most of these people over here, up here, they only identify in small numbers now, down from the 60s and 70%. The Crimean country, well, most of the people here identify as the Crimean countries. The trading states will still exist. No one has basically taken them out yet. That might change, obviously, in the future, but this trading country is mostly made up of people from the surrounding countries. Brakia, Dante, and Feta is mostly Brakian, Dante, and Fetians. Ranian, I think this country is called Ranin. Most of the people are Ranian. Gartana is Gartani, mostly Gartani people. Demonia is a mix of Gartani and Pentanovan people, likely form their own unique ethnicity. Kind of like Osai was Gartanan with a mix of these countries over here. Yeah, so basically Osai is mostly the same. Pentanovan is a very ethnically diverse country. You have kind of like Persians or Astanis down here. You have unique ethnicities up here. And you have even small portions of Demonians up here. and you have several smaller ethnicities on the fringes of the country. Pentanovan is only 76% Pentanovian, whereas it's mostly over here, and the rest is mostly the outer edges of the country. Next is Isauri, Astan, and Tau. These countries are mostly just the same ethnicity. They're like Persian ethnicity, but they are basically separate countries, with separate goals and separate kings. Nova is only 56% Northern. Then the mainland Nova is like 96%, but you have to realize that they have a lot of colonial lands. So a lot of the colonial lands make up around 44% of the population, which means, yeah. Ajax is another strange one. Well, Ajaxis only make up around 63%. That's because the peoples here are not Ajaxis and make up a large portion of the population. Trenti and Binu and Boxo, yeah, they have their own. This area up here has its own ethnic makeup, and basically this area doesn't really have the people here. Besides outside of Trenti, don't really have an ethnic country. Meanwhile, Boxos, the Binu, which is separated between all of here. The Binu ethnicity is the most dominant ethnicity of this area. And then we go to India. Well, India has so many ethnicities that they could all gain their independence, but India is basically how it is. Dorsa has a world 26 different ethnicities. And yeah. Nadai is mostly Nadayan. Bisa is made up of several different ethnicities. As the country is a tribal democracy, well, a bunch of tribes came together and hey, we're gonna make a democratic system out of our country. Gravista is mostly Gravistan people, as that's what these people here call, but there are several smaller, lesser known ethnicities over here that I will not name. Next is Nai, which is mostly Nayan people over here, with several people over here, and Bano people living over here. Utia and Nisai and this portion is one ethnicity, but they're slowly going to change over time as well. Viatayans live mostly over here, Sinis over here. Most of the people here are of Zinese descent, so besides Rufu, which is mostly Rufu people, and Kanto, which is mostly basically like Korean people, yeah. Sisa is mostly Sisan ethnicity, Zeta is mostly Zetan ethnicity, and Zinnis make up the vast majority of people here. And also however, the vast majority of current migration to these countries are actually from these Southeast Asian nations. So Zinnis only make up around 86% of the population here, and Xanadu is 90% of the population. However, the percentage is slowly dropping over time as people from Southeast Asia continue to migrate into this country, which is a Zinnis nation. We'll see how the country reacts to it over Southeast Asian migration. Obviously, as even in this world, immigration is a hot issue as well. This country is mostly like Japanese people or Sunni people in this world. Miku is a separate ethnicity, and Susan is a separate ethnicity as well. But Susan as an ethnicity is very well, and it's mostly the Sunni, the same ethnicity, broadly across Japan. Africa, well, these three countries are mostly African ethnicities. These countries actually are the same ethnicity, but they have different governments. India is made up of many different ethnicities throughout the country, but they're majorly united by its religion as well. Tibet is Congo nation, well, they're basically just existing as well. And meanwhile, these colonies here, well, they mostly exist of currently existing ethnicities. And basically are 99% the settlers from these countries. So yeah, that's the current ethnic makeup of these countries. Because most people do not know of these areas, and it's likely these areas will be remaining sparsely populated for hundreds of years as well. And we don't even know if these North American colonies will even survive either. as they discovered the new world way earlier than we did, 700 years earlier. So, yeah. Yeah. So what do you expect from this? I think you would expect the further colonization and settlement of the European continent, as there's still a lot. Again, like of the real life settlement of Europe, Europe's settlement kind of started around here, and then there started to be more civilizations in this area as well. I think also throughout this decade, this next couple of centuries, you expect to see the colonization of the Indonesian islands and further colonizations of Australia as well. And also more countries in Africa to pop up as well. And will there be a scramble of Africa? Well, we'll wait to see way later if this actually happens. Currently, the only country that really has colonies is Yami and Nova as well, but African countries have not really risen up that much outside of like Ethiopia and a few small countries in the central by these lakes here, and a country in the Congo, and of course North Africa as well. Which, yeah, there's a bunch of colonial countries here. So yeah, it's very exciting to see where we'll take the series as well. And yeah, there's no country with a lot of aging at this current moment, as kind of like in the Dark Ages, most people don't live past 30. So yeah, 30 is kind of a lifetime for most people. As well. Also in this world there is, I don't know if it is in real life, but in this world there is, a lot of, because the world is still very religious. Most of the world either believes in reincarnation or some sort of heaven and hell. Basically, a good area for good people and bad area for bad people. So basically, because, yeah, for example, most of these countries believe in the heaven and hell. So most of these, there is a divide between these religions and these religions here. Reincarnation is the most popular belief in the Asian nations, and in the European and Middle Eastern nations, heaven and hell is the most popular concept of life after death, as basically, the do-gooders get rewarded, and the bad people get sent to, I'm not going to try to use the Christian version, but kind of like a jail of sorts. Okay? It's kind of like that. They kind of get sent to a jail, for a while, and then they learn their ways, and they're forced to come back. But basically, the people who, there is one religion, like this religion up here, does believe in kind of like, if someone redeems themselves in the lower dimension or hell, they do get to reincarnate and have a new body. But yeah, most of these cultures just believe, like, especially the Indian cultures, they can reincarnate into animals. Same thing with these cultures, except for these two cultures down here too. The Chinese religion just believe in like the Buddhism version. Also, in this world, there are still atheists that exist. They only usually make up like 1% of the 0.1 to 1% of the population. The country with the highest amount of religious skeptics is, I think, in Maki, where they make up around 2% of the population. Yes, that's a shockingly high number, 2% of the population as well. The lowest amount of atheists, I think, is in like 6 countries where there's like 100% religion, like Taoist. 0% of the population is atheist. This country, 0% of the population is atheist. Benue, 0%. These two Somali nations is 0%. And there's one more nation that does not really believe in atheism, and that's this tribal Polish nation, which is 0% atheist as well. So we'll wait to see how the world progresses and if atheism has a rise and how it affects in the world going forward. Goodbye.